It's about a quarter till, and we'll think about running up to maybe 11:30 if y'all feel good going that long. Kind of depends on how much you have for me. If you only got 5 more minutes of material, we'll just stop at 10 till 11, right? Did we reload the slides? There it goes. There, our question's back up. So did you think about that during the break? And what else you might give as a reason for why young people grow up with faith and then walk away, other than something we've said so far? You jumping in on this?
I think they find something that they think is better.
They find something that they think is better. Now, when you say that, do you have something in mind that they find?
Like a different religion.
So they find a religion that they think is better. Thank you for that. Will y'all stir that around in your minds a little bit? They find a religion that they think is better. So what might someone find in another religion that they think is better than what happens among us? Yes.
Once saved, always saved, and the Calvinist belief.
Like the idea, no matter what I do, I'm still going to be saved. It's a pretty attractive doctrine. Thank you for that. Yes, sir?
Just could apply to, like, maybe not even going to a different religion, but just to a different congregation. You might be at a congregation where if you miss a Sunday, they're going to notice and they're going to ask you about it. So you're going to feel like more accountable, but you might want to go to a different congregation because if you miss, no one notices. It's not really a big deal.
Nobody's going to get on my case if I show up, if I don't show up, and kind of do what I want to do. Pay attention. That first thing we talked about, pay attention how many times underneath that is that fundamental human desire. I want to have things my way. The greatest battle we wage, are y'all listening to me? I still got you. Greatest battle you and I will wage in our life is not against the devil and not against the enemies of faith. It is against my own stubborn will. We want things our way. If you pay attention, that's usually down there somewhere, and that's the thing we must tackle. That's why when Jesus said, if anyone wants to come after me, he must first deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. It's the greatest struggle. Okay? What else might somebody find in a religion that's different from us that they like better? Yes, ma'am. How about what? Hypocrisy in the church. Okay, remember our bookshelf over here? I'm going to put that one there. I want to come back. And if I forget, I want you to wave both hands at me and say, you forgot, okay? I want to come back to that I want to deal with that all by itself because I think that's a big deal. Okay? What might people find in another religion that's different from us? They like that better. Yes, ma'am. So I have to tell you that other religious groups are just way cooler than we are. I mean, isn't that true? They have a band, and the music, I mean, it's like a concert. It's really good. And sometimes, have you ever been to a little church up in the country where there's like 30 people and the average age is 87? Yep, been to that church? How's the singing? Did you really give me a thumbs up? Okay, you found the exception, not the rule. How's the singing usually? Not very good. Yeah, and let me tell you what often happens, because I see this happen a lot with young people. I am very curious about the question that we're working with. And so talking to young people, I have found that the thing that gets a lot of them is worship. Because they go to these places where it's way more lively and people are up on their feet and their hands are waving in the air and the girls are crying and the mascara's running and it streaks down their cheeks and it's very emotional, and they come and sit in one of our services and it's way, way more tame. Here's what they say. It's so much more spiritual over there. And so one of the things I fear, especially when you move off and go to college, because I know some young people that move off and go to college in some little Texas town where I live, where the church is 12 people with an average age of 87. But all the college kids go to the cool church with the really awesome worship. And that's where they end up being drawn to. Okay? So my question to you is, if you had a friend struggling with that very same dilemma, what would you say to them about that? Yes, sir.
It's not my choice to judge you. I'm going to let God do that, but I feel bad for you. What will God say to you in the end?
Okay, so let me grab a couple of things in the statement that you just made. First of all, about the question of judgment. Do y'all get hit with that a lot? Don't judge. It's wrong to judge. You shouldn't judge people. Do y'all hear that a lot? You shouldn't judge me for the way I live my life. You shouldn't judge me for my religious choices. Can I say something to y'all about that? Will y'all hear me on this whole idea that judging is bad? Will you hear me on this? That is one of the dumbest things that anybody is saying in our culture. It is utterly ridiculous that people are running around saying, don't judge. You do realize when they say to you, you shouldn't judge people, what did they just do? To which you should respond, then stop it, judger. Folks, people judge constantly. If you have a job and you're getting off at 11:30 at night and you're walking out to your car and some sketchy dude comes walking up to you from out of the shadows, what are you doing? What?
Going faster.
Running. Judger. What makes you think he's a bad guy? Because it's dark and he looks sketchy. Come on, what does your dad want you to do? He wants you to pull out your weapon at that point, right? Constantly, people judge all the time. In fact, biblically, we are commanded to judge. But here's the thing. Matthew 7 teaches righteous judgment, right? So the truth is God's the judge. But here's the second reality under that. The judge spoke. My job is not to judge. My job is to say what the judge said. Okay? I'm commanded to do that. Go make disciples of all the nations. Go preach the gospel. Okay? So let's be careful about the judging thing. The other thing that's important that you said is that God decides about worship. The judge said some stuff about how we ought to worship. And so the truth is, I need to be listening to God. Okay? That's where we start. That's the foundation. I think I'm preaching about that this week. Isn't that on the list? Do I have a lesson about worship on the list? I don't know. I don't have a list in front of me. Maybe. Okay. What else should you say to someone who says, I want to go to the cool church. I don't want to go to the church with the old people? Yes, ma'am.
You have to ask yourself which congregation's worship is from the heart.
Isn't it the people with the running mascara?
Well, it depends if they're listening to either the words that people are singing or if it's just the music.
That's very hard to do, isn't it? So, can I say something to you about that? Where your hands are doesn't make you more spiritual. I'm not more spiritual if my hands are here. I'm not more spiritual if my hands are, they're just hands, right? And so if people are doing this, that doesn't make you can do this with an empty heart, right? You can do this with a full heart. It's not about your hands. It never has been. Okay? The heart's the hard one. That's what's on the inside. Thank you. What else?
Just
What
to
do
add to that, I think that makes me think of the Pharisees, how they were like very outgoing and just doing a lot of extra stuff, but it wasn't from the heart. It was all for show.
Wasn't from the heart. Always the problem. Hypocrisy. Why else? What else are you going to say to this person that wants to go to the fun church? Yes, sir.
You don't want to be caught. Typically, what I've seen in teenagers, which I'm excluding myself because I haven't done before. Typically, what I've seen when people go to college, they go to the fun church and ignore the elderly people because they're scared of being embarrassed. Imagine how many people would actually go to the older church if they weren't scared of being embarrassed. That church might actually be cool.
Thank you for that. The assumption is that if it's full of old people, that's not where I want to be as a young person. I want to be with other young people, right? So I want y'all to think with me about that. If the church is full of old people, that's not really the place for me because I need to be where the young people are. Do you see any flaws in that thinking? Sorry? Well, there is kind of a practical reality here. The only way to get more young people to go there is for young people to go to there, right? Thank you. What else?
It goes back to not making your faith your own, you're just following the crowd again.
I am. That is true. I want to give you all a principle to think about this because I think it's picking church. Picking a church is going to be one of the most important things that you do because for a lot of Christians, that's going to be their main lifeline for spiritual feeding. It shouldn't be. Your own personal Bible study ought to be that. But the truth is, a lot of Christians just depend on where they're going to church to do their spiritual feeding. So you're going to be largely shaped and influenced by where you stick yourself as a Christian. So here's the thing I want to say about that, especially in this figure of spiritual feeding. It is not uncommon that what we need is not what we want. Y'all follow me on that? What we need is not always what we What I want is a big, juicy, greasy hamburger. The truth, do y'all eat chicken fried steak in Alabama? Y'all know what that, you with me on that? You closed your eyes when I said that. And frankly, that is exactly the way I feel about chicken fried steak. I just close my eyes. I can taste that in my mouth when it's cooked correctly. And yes, chicken fried steak, creamy white gravy, mashed potatoes, big yeasty roll. I want that. You are nodding no, but you're. That's what I want. Sorry? Man, you are really helping my wife out. Thank you very much. My wife is sitting in the back. My wife is a judgy food Nazi. Don't feel bad for her because she proudly owns it. You watch her at the potluck tomorrow, and if you load up a big plate of dessert, she will be looking at you going, just like that. She will give you that judgy look. Here's the reality of that. The men in my family die of heart disease. And if I eat a lot of chicken fried steak and creamy gravy and yeasty rolls, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the cath lab at the hospital. And I don't want to do that. You know what I need to eat? Salad. Good grief. Salad is just a curse of the devil. I need to eat salad. And I need to eat chicken. I don't ever see red meat at my house. My wife feeds me whatever she made chicken look like that night. That's what I eat. I need to eat that if I'm going to be healthy and not sick, the doctor all the time. With me? What I want is not always what I need. Do y'all know the same thing is true spiritually? Listen, I've heard the church bands in the really big churches. They're cool. The problem is, guys, if you talk to the kids who go to that church, here's one of the things that they will say to you, and that is the worship is shallow and topwater and doesn't feed the deeper spiritual needs. I actually read an article a few years ago about young atheists and why young people who grow up become atheists and in churches become atheists. And one of the young men made exactly that comment. He said, I was wrestling with these deep questions, and the church I was going to gave me nothing of depth to deal with my serious questions. And so the reason I'm saying that to you is the church full of the old people who've been living the life and walking the path a long, long time may exactly be what you need when you're 19 years old. Not the ice cream and the pizza spiritually, but the meat, the deep stuff, the healthy stuff. And frankly, God may have brought you to that place so that you could be a blessing to that group of old people. Can I tell you something I'm really tired of? And I've been guilty of making this mistake. I think too long in the church, we've created this idea among young people that the church exists to serve me. That's why we have special events like this for young people, and that's why we have weekends for young people, and that's why we have devos where when you have a devo at someone's house, what do you have to do? What's your part? Literally, what do you have to do? You have to bring food? Our kids don't. You know what our kids have to do? Show up. That's it. And they're catered to. They're like Downton Abbey royalty. Everyone brings food for them. The preacher's preparing to teach a devo, and they just have to sit there and enjoy everything that's been provided for them, which is not life in the kingdom of God. Jesus came to be a servant, and he calls us to be servants. And maybe part of that is our fault. Maybe we should be encouraging and facilitating more works of service among our youth. But that's what enters into that thinking. This ought to be something that does something for me, instead of thinking, I'm in a church, 15 old people. What can I do to take care of them? When I first started preaching, that's where I ended up in a church with just a bunch of old people. And you know what Heidi and I became? Their grandchildren, which was really cool. We really got taken care of while we were there. And I promise you, most of the time, you wind up in a church full of old people. They'll take care of you. Don't write out the little church. Write off the little church that's full of old people. And don't compromise your principles for scriptural, biblical worship because you want the cool band. That makes it about you. And it's supposed to be about God. Picking a church is a big deal. You should probably talk to some people on your board about that. Which people on your board need to weigh in on which church you go to? Gray heads, thank you. You picked up something today that delights me. All right. Watching the clock there. Okay. Give me some other answers to this question. Big question. I'm pointing, there's this huge monitor behind me, and I just want to point back there. I keep forgetting y'all look back here. You are looking back here. Why do some young people grow up among us and then walk away from Jesus? Why does that happen? Yes, sir.
They have stressful days where someone falls ill, so they start cursing, drugs, whatever to replace that. And then once you do it once, it gets easier.
So they're dealing with stress with the wrong things and get caught up in that life. Thank you for that. What else? Yes, sir. Did you have your hand up?
I guess for me right now, thinking about college, I want to go and do the job that I like, but I also want to
Yeah, and we probably have been guilty of programming some of that. So what he said was that we get caught up with education and with work and making those things the priority, and we don't think enough about the things we need in our spiritual life to keep us healthy. So great example of that. I had some friends that sent their son off to college in a town where there was no church for 50 miles. Why would you do that? Why would you go someplace where you're going to be for 4 years under vicious assault by the devil, and your brothers and sisters are meeting 50 miles away? So making that spiritual things the priority, the important thing. Absolutely critical. Thank you for that. Who else wants to weigh in? Yes, sir. By the way, ladies, you are allowed to participate. Just thought maybe y'all forgot that after the break. Yes, sir.
Kind of talking about what you said too. Some people, they get a job and then they don't want to take time out of their busy life to go to church or to have works of service or things like that.
Yeah, one of the things that happens to us is if we get consumed about work and education and all the things that pertain to that, and that starts during college. Listen, when you guys go off to school, it becomes so important for you at that time to connect with God, because you're going to start developing your patterns of adult life. And whatever you learn while you're in school is what you're going to carry with you. The other thing that's going on when you're in college, do you realize that you make like 2 of life's most critical decisions typically when you're in college? 2 most important decisions. What are they? I didn't hear the whisper.
I'm thinking.
Okay. Out loud. Interesting.
What you're going to do for the rest of your life.
I am deciding what my job is going to be, right? What work I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Huge decision, very important. What is the second decision that most people, young people, make while they're in college? What? A lot of young people, especially young Christians, choose who they're going to be married to the rest of their life. And I'm telling you, after the choice of God, that's second on the list, right? So I want y'all to think with me about this. How profoundly dumb, I mean that, hear me on this. How profoundly dumb to be making these critical life choices and to let yourself be drifting away from God during that period. You see the problem with that? That period while you're in college, it's absolutely critical that during that period, you are closely connected to God and wired in with Him, and that board of directors you've got and what's in His Word to get you making those right choices. Very, very important. Thank you for that. What else? Yes, ma'am.
I would say on the people who like getting jobs and moving and all that stuff, I would say also money. People wanting to spend more time at their job, wanting to get good promotions and work more and work, and then they put church and the Christians behind to follow the money.
It's the culture we live in, right? So if you let yourself get consumed with the pursuit of money and the stuff it can buy, what did Jesus say in the Sermon on the Mount? You can't have 2 masters. If you're serving the dollar, then you're not serving God. You can't have both. Can I tell y'all the sad thing about this? And there really is no way for you to know this until you've lived another 40, 45 years, okay? But I bet the gray heads sitting around here are absolutely going to agree with what I'm about to say. You get to a point where the stuff doesn't matter. I just don't care about stuff anymore. Part of that is my mom and dad are really getting toward the end of their life. And their life now is a little apartment. They got a few things in it. But you know what they really care about right now? Having each other. Stuff doesn't matter. And you just find out there's still an emptiness after you have the stuff. Everybody has a God-shaped hole in their heart that you can only fill with God. Money will not fill it up. It's a great point. I want to go back to what you said. You didn't remind me. Were you just thinking I was going to get to it? One of the reasons that people walk away, and it isn't just young people this time, it's everybody, and I hear this a lot, is because someone in the church was mean to me. Have you ever had that happen? Why is it worse when a church family member treats you in a wicked way? Why is it worse when it's a church family member?
These are people who are supposed to love, accept, and all that stuff. But when someone is mean to you, it's like, what's the point? It's like hypocrites.
So when it comes to church family, we have higher what? Expectations. Because you said that you love Jesus like I do. And you come and you sit with me in this place and you worship God and we open the Bible and we study together. You're supposed to be following Jesus, and then you're mean to me like you were gossiping with some other people and running me down and saying bad things about me, or we were dating and you cheated on me and we're flirting with this other girl and then dumped me for her. You were supposed to be a Christian guy. What's wrong with you? Or some older people in the church gossiped about me and said bad things about me. Or some older lady came up and said, your dress is too short, or your pants are too tight. You need to dress modestly. Or someone was ugly to my family. Do y'all want me to go on? I've heard all that. And there are people who literally get angry and leave Jesus because somebody in the church was mean to them.
Being mean and correcting, because we always need those people to correct us when we're doing wrong. And it may seem mean, but they're doing it out of love.
Okay, so you're starting with the answer, so let's work that a little bit. One of the things we need to do is distinguish between counsel that may involve correction and somebody being unkind, right, and mean. We even need to distinguish between correction that's done poorly and somebody that's being mean. Because none of us have ever tried to say something to help someone and ended up saying the wrong way and hurting their feelings, right? None of y'all ever done that, right? You know, when I was at the hospital, I'm so scared I say the wrong thing. You know, I just end up doing something like, you know, hope you don't die, right? It's so hard sometimes to know how to say the right thing. We struggle with that. So let me ask you a question. Should you get fussed at periodically about stuff you're doing? Should there be times that people in the church family call you out for your behavior? Should that happen? Why should that happen? They should care about you. Why else should that happen?
Sometimes you might not know, or might not really fully realize that you're doing something wrong, and it helps when somebody really brings that to light.
We may not know we're doing wrong and we need someone to help us. Galatians 6:1. If anyone is overtaken in a fault, you who are spiritual, restore them. So let's start with that. And sometimes people say things to me that are hard for me to hear. Remember, the wise man said that the wounds of a friend are faithful. I need people to help me stay on track. That's one of the purposes of the spiritual family. So if you expected to be in here, to be part of a family, and nobody ever say anything to you, that's not a loving family. That's a group of indifferent people who don't care about you. That's part of the deal. So that means sometimes you get a pat on the back, people say, that was great, good job. And sometimes they say, your pants are too tight, lady. You dress more modestly. Fair enough. Great point. But what if it isn't correction? What if it was just somebody was mean to you? What do you say to the person that's ready to walk away from Jesus because somebody in the church was mean to them?
Lots of people were mean to Jesus.
Not his own disciples.
You can tell Peter to get behind him.
Yeah, even his own disciples treated him badly. Can you imagine one of the most poignant moments in the gospel story to me is the third time Peter denies Jesus. I think it's in John's account. Am I right about this, Colby? I think it's in John's account where the text says after the third time, what did Jesus do? You remember? What did he do? He turned and looked at him. Aren't you glad Jesus did not give up on Peter after his betrayal? Right? Jesus has been through that. That's a great thing to say. What else are you going to say to someone who wants to walk away because people in the church have been mean to him?
I have a couple verses. I'm going to tie them in. If you don't understand it, crazy people understand crazy things. Ecclesiastes 1, 2 through 4, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. What? Here's where I tie it in. Just ignore it. I don't care if someone starts cursing me out. Just ignore it. God's going to judge it.
There is a place where some of this stuff we just have to leave to God, right? And let him figure it out. Thank you for that. What else?
Think of all the people who are not being in the church.
What about the people who are not being mean to me? Thank you for that. We should consider that. Yes, sir.
The person might not know that they were mean to you. Like they might have just done
No way. No way. The person doesn't know they're mean to me? Come on. Really? Does that happen? I had an experience one time. A lady came to me. I'd preached about grudges or something, and she came to me after the sermon, and she said, "I've been mad at you for 7 years." Exactly my reaction. I'm like, I thought we were friends. What do you mean you've been mad at me for 7 years? And it was, I had used a word that has like more than one meaning, and she misunderstood how I was using the word and saying something to somebody, and she got mad at me about it. It's exactly right. She thought I was being mean, and it was just a misunderstanding. That's why people ought to talk to each other about this stuff. Thank you for that. Anything else? I've been trying to say this intentionally, hoping you would pick up on this. So see if you hear it this time. Why would somebody walk away from Jesus because someone had been mean to them? It's easier than forgiving. I'm sorry?
Because their faith isn't strong.
Can't hear you.
Their faith isn't strong.
Their faith isn't strong? Why do you say that?
Because if they walk away from Jesus, then they clearly didn't have strong enough faith.
Yeah, I want to say, what did Jesus do? Are you walking away from Jesus? What did he do? That's why I didn't say people leave the church, because it isn't about leaving the church. It's about leaving Jesus. My second question is, where are you going to go? I'm going to go to this church across town. Guess what? If there are people in it, they will hurt your feelings. Guys, getting your feelings hurt by people, that's called life. And if you don't want to ever have your feelings hurt, you need an off-grid cabin in the woods where you live by yourself. People hurt your feelings. That's life. And we got to know how to manage those in a healthy way. Walking away from Jesus is a completely unreasonable way to do that. Okay? Thank you for bringing that up. That was a great topic. I appreciate that. And that's a big one with impact. I want to throw out a couple of things to you that I want you to think about. You've given me some great answers today, and I appreciate that. I'm running close on time. Some people walk away, think about this. Some people walk away because of their doubts. Some people walk away because of their doubts. Will you think with me about that for a minute? Explain that to me. Why would people walk away because of their doubts? Some people walk away because they just decide they're not sure there is a God. They doubt that. Thank you. Help me. Why would people walk away because of their doubts? Sorry?
They don't ask questions and look for answers.
They never figure out their doubts. Let's do something weird. I'll let the adults participate, okay? Don't let me down here. And y'all can look around because I want you to see this. How many of you have ever struggled with a doubt? Raise your hand. How about you? How many of you have ever struggled with a doubt? Okay, so first thing I want you to know, everybody struggles with doubts. Do you see that? I mean, do y'all realize even the apostles struggled with doubts, like the people who saw Jesus work miracles struggled with doubts? My favorite story is when Peter's walking on the water, right? Jesus comes walking on the water, and Peter says, me too, me too, me too. The hardest part of that should have been getting out of the boat, right? That's the tough one. But he did that. He got out on the water, and he's walking on the water with Jesus, and then he doubts. And I think that's the dumbest thing in the world. Winds and the waves. And he doubted. Thomas doubted. We give him a hard time. Till I see that the imprint of the nails, I'm not going to believe. Everybody wrestles with doubts. And I want to grab what you said. I want to grab what you said because you're exactly right, okay? I want to grab what you said. What are you supposed to do with your doubts? Yeah. Yes. Voice them. Say it. Now, this is for everybody. Everybody with me? Because this is what breaks my heart. I want y'all to hear that. When I talk to young people, what they tell me is that church is not a safe place to talk about their doubts. Church is not a safe place to talk about my doubts. Because my older son had terrible doubts. And I asked him, I said, dude, our family was open. We could talk about anything. And he said, are you kidding me? I was a preacher's kid. How could I say I was doubting what I believed? That terrifies me. Young people struggle with their doubts. Why are Christians mean to homosexuals? Why do they say ugly, tacky things about transgenderism? How do I really know that the Bible hasn't been changed down through time? How do I even know there's a God? How can there be a God with all this awful stuff happening in the world? I thought he was loving and all-powerful. Why is he doing something about the babies who will die of starvation today in Africa? Doubts. So what I need to say, and I'm glad y'all are listening, because we need to communicate to y'all that this is a safe place to talk about your doubts. Whatever they are. Nobody's going to get mad at you. Nobody's going to think you're a bad person because you already saw. All of us have wrestled with our doubts. We just need to get them out and put them on the table. I like that idea. Who said make them your strengths? Who said that? Was it you that said that? You said, yeah, take our doubts and work them so thoroughly that we make them our strength. So I want y'all to think about answering this question. And if some of you are moms and dads in the crowd, this is the question to talk to your kids about on the way home today. I want you to wrestle with this question. If I doubted God existed, could I say that in Bible class? Could I go to some adult in the church and say, I'm really doubting belief in God. I'm doubting God exists. I need you to help me with that. Who would you go to with that question? Because I tell you what kids are doing. They're not going to elders. They're not going to preachers. They're not going to parents. They're going to YouTube. Right? You're with me on that? YouTube, Google. And that isn't helping us. So it's good. This is a safe place. I'm going to say it first, and they're going to say it to you and repeat it over and over again. This is a safe place. You can talk about anything. Anything. Put it on the table. One more thing, and it's along those same lines, and then I'll quit talking. Y'all have been great today. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate that. And it connects to what we just said. I think some people leave Jesus because of science. Ooh, I saw some nods. Y'all with me on that? Tell me why you're with me on that. Y'all buy that? You leave Jesus because of science. Well, y'all nodded. Wait. I'll come back to you, I promise. But the girls in the back, isn't that interesting? I don't want y'all to feel excluded. And I know you're not with them. You're just you're the pioneer bringing everybody together. Good for you. So help me understand why people would walk away from Jesus because of science. Yes, ma'am.
We just went over biology this year, and some of the things I noticed were the evolution. It gives people a sense of where we came from, because a lot of people don't want to believe somebody just said, I want people on earth, and that just happened. Evolution gave them like a source, a beginning, an origin, and that's what they were looking for.
So thank you for that. I think that evolution is probably the number one scientific problem for faith. And it's because it presents an alternative to Genesis, right? So Genesis gives an explanation of where you and I came from. And evolution tells a completely different story. And some people are drawn to Darwin's theory of evolution because it is appealing. It's appealing because they say it's scientific. We have scientific data to prove that evolution is true. Genesis is clearly a myth. I think some people actually want evolution to be true because if there is no God, I get to do whatever I want to do. And that comes back to where you started us today. The fundamental human struggle is, I want things my way. And if there is no God, nobody gets to make the rules but me, right? So I think evolution is a big deal. And what the world is going to try to convince you of is that you can be educated and scientific and thinking, and if those are the things you are, you believe in evolution, or you can be backward, uneducated, and stupid, and those are the people who believe in Genesis. That's what the world wants you to believe, and that is a lie of the devil. Don't ever let anyone convince you that you are dumb because you believe Genesis, or that you are dumb because you reject evolution. Okay? Now, I'll tell you why I say that. Everything you're hearing on this in the world out there is intentionally biased to one side. You aren't getting the whole story. Evolution is taught as established scientific fact in school, and that's the only story you guys get. They don't even tell you the problems with evolution, much less the arguments against the theory. You do realize there are arguments against the theory of evolution. Do y'all realize that? There's evidence against the theory of evolution. Do you know what any of it is? You've been in a lot. I'm giving some other people a turn. Thank you, though. You know what any evidence against evolution? You're nodding. You're nodding, but you're not speaking.
I did a study of it,
Good, good for you.
Yeah, I'm homeschooled.
You're homeschooled? That was funny, by the way. Thank you for that.
There's a lot of scientific evidence about how they misplace evidence to make it look
Yes.
like it's part of evolution.
Yeah, actually constructed frauds to make it work, which is interesting if they have all the evidence as they claim.
There's a lot of proof in archaeology that also proves it just from them reconstructing bones the wrong way and misplacing stuff, and it's obvious that they were tampering with evidence, and that alone should prove that it's wrong, but nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, one of the untold stories are all of the frauds that have taken place through the years by scientists trying to prove evolution. You would think that a fair study of that theory would include telling you that science has sometimes created fake evidence to prove the theory, which again is odd if all of the evidence is stacked in favor of it. You were raising your hand and now you're yawning. Should I go ahead and call on you?
Well, I think that one of it is that it's not even proven that it's actually like true in like according to science anyway, that it's technically a theory, which I think is kind of, people have taken it as fact, even though it's technically not proven, and it's been around for like decades, and I think that like, that's my sister, by the way, if you're wondering, and shit, you're welcome.
So you are conspiring on the scientists.
Boom, there you go.
So you homeschool too then?
No, I was for a year, but I was in public school most of my life.
So you've had both.
Exactly. So I had, me and a friend of mine, like we had evolution in schools, and I think that, you know, growing up with that and not believing in it was just, it was sitting there and you're like, you know, you could at least have both perspectives
Yep.
and make it more fair, I think, but given this one-sided perspective in whole life. And I think that most people just take it and they don't really care about it, they're just like accepting this fact. And I think that that's not really how it should be. I think it should be where you get a balanced perspective of what other people think about it.
I do very much agree that you guys are getting one side of the story. You're not getting the evidence against. And there are a lot of young people who are growing up and saying, I don't want to be dumb. And so they're giving up on the Bible, they're giving up on God, because they've been told their whole life that evolution is true. And if you don't believe that, you're dumb. So I just want to say a couple things to you about that before we wrap up. Thank you for sharing your insights on that. And you are correct. One of the things to remember about evolution is that it has no beginning place. Do you know what the current theory is among atheists for how everything got started? You'll need to give me more than that. Big Bang? Okay. But to have a Big Bang, you have to have something to blow up, matter. You have to have energy for an explosion, and you have to have a trigger. So where did the original matter and energy come from for the Big Bang? Do you know what current atheist theory is for that? That it came from nothing. So literally, later in this slideshow, I could show you the video, the most famous atheist in the world, Richard Dawkins, saying that out of nothing came something, and that's how they started. A deeply scientific theory that was produced in laboratories at Harvard, right? No. That's a myth, guys. Science teaches the opposite, that you don't get nothing from something, or something from nothing. Second, you have no way to explain the beginning of life. I know I've read about the swamp too, with the chemicals that were all in the right proportions that all came together and made the first self-replicating cell. I understand that's out there. There's only one problem with that, and it's been over about the last 70 years that this has become a problem. It's called DNA. The coding system that makes cells do what they do and makes you who you are. It's like a computer program. How did the first living thing get its DNA? Who coded those first cells? Because you know, it's like millions of bits of data that have to be perfectly aligned. Anybody know who Matt Bassford is? Heard that name? Heard that name? You ever sing the song Exalted? He wrote it. A year ago November, Matt died from ALS. He was a good friend, and he explained to me what ALS is. He said, one piece of my genetic code was wrong. And he died. So how did the very first living thing get coded? Do you know what currently is considered a theory to explain that? How we got our first living things. Literally, guys like Dawkins, Crick, who discovered DNA, these guys have posited this as an explanation of where first life came from. You know what they say? You're not going to believe me. I have a video on this too. Aliens. Literally, they say that billions of years ago, aliens came to Earth and seeded simple life forms on Earth that evolved into life we see today. Aliens is literally on the table, not God. Aliens. You know why? Because unless an alien is holding a phaser to your head, you don't have to do what he said. And if there's a God, you have to do what God said. The last thing I would say to you about this scientifically is that for evolution to be true, you got to have all kinds of animals gradually becoming other animals. So reptiles had to become birds, and for that to happen, millions and millions of sort of reptile, sort of birds creature had to exist. They call those transitional forms. You ever heard of that? Transitional forms, right? The in-between creatures. The missing link. And if Darwin's theory is true, billions of missing links to get all the life form that exists today. You know how many undisputed examples we have of missing links today? None. They don't tell you that either. They just slap Archaeopteryx in a textbook and say, there's a missing link, believe in evolution. And they don't even agree if that's a transitional form, right? They don't even tell you that scientists disagree on that, right? You're not getting the whole story. I just say that to you because I don't ever want a biology professor at college to undermine your faith by telling you there's a mountain of evidence for evolution, it's absolutely true, and if you don't believe it, you're dumb. That's not true. And he's not telling you the whole story. In fact, evolution is more in doubt today than it has ever been. DNA has just killed the theory. It's just that no way nature can do DNA. So they're ready for aliens. Okay? All right, I'm going to stop. But before I do, I want to say to you guys, there are lots and lots of reasons people walk away. And I don't know if we've tapped into what might be a struggle for you today or not. But this is a safe place for you to talk about those things. And I want you to carry that with you today and for the rest of your life. That I can go to people in my church family. I can talk about this. I will stay today. If you want to hang around and catch me privately and share something you're struggling with, happy to do that. I just want you to know that this is a safe place for you to do that. You know, in John 6, we read about a whole multitude of people who are following Jesus. He had fed them. They loved the meal. They're intrigued by him. And then he starts teaching them. And at the end of the chapter, after hearing his teaching, they all start walking away. I mean, it must have been a huge number. Because it's so bad, Jesus says to his own disciples, he says, are you going to leave too? And Peter, in one of his good moments, has the great line. He said, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. That's what's at stake in this battle. That's why your faith needs to last. It's not just about making life better now. It's about eternal life. Everything is hanging on the decision you make about Jesus. You struggle with that, we want to help you with that. All right, I think we're going to close with a prayer. I think you've been assigned to lead that prayer. Anything else we need to say tonight? Delighted that you guys have come. I'm so encouraged. Thank you for being here, and thank you for not being zombies. I am very grateful for that. I enjoyed the conversation today.
Bow with me. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you that we're all able to come out on a Saturday and choose to come and learn about you. We ask for help as we grow up and face some of these challenges that we've been over today, and help us to remember that we do have support here and that we can ask questions and that there will always be someone here to help us. Please be with us as we go throughout the rest of the week.